Um, so we covered in the last three episodes the various strategy mindset, and then we did a recap of thinking together. And as I said, this series, or this channel rather, really serves as kind of like, not particularly life hacks, but at least tools and kind of dealing with day-to-day situations, and also every so often kind of reflecting on things that are ongoing and what we can learn from it and how we can grow from it. And one of the things that I've been thinking about actually recently is very recent, very recent unfortunate event that happened in the Gaza Strip yesterday. So the media's already covered, obviously, the fact in terms of unfortunately a hospital being hit in Gaza. But notice how quick the media was to jump to the fact that Israel fired a missile or rocket or whatever without any evidence, and simply based on the reports coming from Hamas in Gaza. Now, Israel has since commented and said we actually didn't fire there, we were nowhere near there, there were actually no strikes at a particular time. Besides the fact that the kind of figures with the body count came out very soon after the attack happened, which is virtually impossible to count that quickly. But besides that, Israel's released footage and even correspondence between the Hamas terrorists that were operating in the strip and actually discussing the misfire. Now, just to put things into perspective, Hamas targets innocent civilians. Israel does not. Israel actually tries to minimize the casualties. I've posted about this on LinkedIn, and which the figures actually support this claim. But in any event, the missiles that Hamas fires at Israel they are not guided missiles, and they're kind of homemade missiles, if you will, a lot of them at least. And so the figure stands at, I think, about 450 misfires. So out of all the missiles, thousands of missiles that Hamas has fired towards Israel, the majority of them are fortunately reaching a destination in Israel. 450 of them have actually landed within the Gaza Strip, being either a misfire or whatever else it is. Now, the world's very quick to jump to the conclusion and say, well, Israel fired it, when in fact it was not, it was just a misfire on the part of Hamas, but Hamas will not get blamed for harming its own civilians, because that, unfortunately, is the reality that we live with. But I was thinking to myself, what can we actually learn with this? Because we tend to get very upset about these facts, which unfortunately, it's a fact, the media is biased, and we won't be able to change that. The fact is we just need to spread our truth and hope that those that are mature enough and wise enough to try and figure things out for themselves will see the truth. But what can we learn from it? And one of the things that stuck with me from my young years in school is that I remember that my rabbi taught me, and there was a very, very wise and great rabbi who passed away, I think, as the Second World War started, just before. His name was Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan. So he was a great rabbi in Radin, which is in Vilna, Vilnius. No, sorry, I take that back. It's a city in Latvia. Sorry. And he commented and he said, we should be upset and actually reflective when any calamity worldwide happens. So if there is some kind of I think at the time there was a natural disaster in Japan. I think it was in Japan or somewhere in the Far East, and there were a lot of casualties, and he was very upset by that. And he told the students in his in college, he told them that they had to actually also think about how they can improve their actions, because we are constantly sent messages, depending on what kind of faith or religion you are, either it's the universe or God. Personally, obviously, I believe that there is a conscious higher power, which I call Hashem, always sending a message, and the messages are sometimes delivered subtly, and then as time goes by, the messages are delivered a lot more direct and intense. And unfortunately, it seems that the tragedy that happened some 10 days ago now was actually, sorry, not 11 days, what was it? Yeah, 11 days ago now, was actually the harshest form of message that we could actually receive, and to kick into action some change that needed to happen. Unfortunately, the resulting immediate change was unity amongst all different factions in Israel and Jewish community worldwide, rushing to help their brothers and sisters where they could, which is amazing, very heartwarming and tear-jerking actually, just to see that kind of unity and that kind of positive change happening in the world. But in any case, the idea is to always kind of learn from these things, and so seeing what happens in this setting where there was a misfire, and then the world media rushing to blame Israel. Is there anything that we can take from that? And I think that if we're being entirely honest, yeah, there is a certain kind of familiarity with that kind of reaction. We tend to be very, very quick to judge other people, and now there is a natural factor behind it, because obviously we live our day-to-day life and we have to make decisions, and sometimes instant decisions, but that it's important for us as humans to be able to differentiate, well, what's an essential, urgent decision I need to make, and what can wait. So judging people, you should never judge anyone. That's rule number one. But if you're having a hard time, you see somebody acting in a certain way, then it's on you to kind of, if you want to form an opinion, which again, why should you? But if you feel that you need to form some kind of opinion and conclusion, take the time to consider the facts. Take the time to say, well, maybe that person isn't guilty, maybe there's more to it than meets the eye. And in Hebrew we call that dan l'kaf zechus, which means judging people favourably or meritoriously. And that, I think, is the lesson for us, because whilst for us as a Jewish nation and for the worldwide community, that whilst we try and find meaning in everything, unfortunately, because we do live in a very negative world. I mean, good news doesn't really sell, does it? And so, there's this need, or at least a seeming need, to put a negative spin on everything and to condemn things, etc., etc. And we need to actually learn to put the brakes on that. Stop for a second. We need to learn to stop ourselves, right? And think and say, hold on a second, things might be slightly different than what I imagined. And I think that if that's one lesson that we can take away from this, obviously it's terribly unfortunate that human lives were lost, and in this tragic misfire. But if there's one lesson that we can take in judging other people favourably, and thereby kind of not painting them in a negative light, not taking negative action or withholding positive action, because of our findings, then I think that we will have learned at least a lesson. There may be multiple layers of lessons, but that's definitely one thing that I think is really, really hit. So at least for me, and I'm sure that many others can relate as well, that when it comes to circumstances which may seem that the obvious explanation is X. So in this scenario, Israel and Hamas are at war, and if there's a building that's attacked in Gaza, well, then obviously it means that Israel did it, because kind of you got the back and forth, and that's how it would be. But clearly the fact that that's not the case. So sometimes what you can actually also see is that the most obvious explanation isn't always the explanation. And like with what we've seen previously about thinking together, what's important is actually adopting a humble stance in terms of the mindset, you know, about humility. Maybe I don't know everything, maybe there is more to this. And really, humility is the core of actually every positive character trait, because, and we'll discuss this through the various episodes, because in order to be able to learn, you must be humble. You know, if you've got a kid that comes to school, for example, and is a know-it-all, that child will not learn as much as somebody who's coming to school thinking, wow, there's so much for me to learn, let me try and see what I can learn. So yeah, that's kind of my reflections on more recent events, and I think we'll be doing this kind of more on a daily basis, and looking forward to hearing from you with any comments, and please feel free to subscribe, and let me know if there's anything that you would like to share, and happily do that on the next episode. Thank you.